Enrique, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
It's amazing to be here, Sean. It's amazing to be free. And thank you. Thank you for
You're
having
welcome.
me on.
All right. I want to for a lot of people who don't know you or don't understand the circumstances around January 6th, I kind of want to walk through this a little methodically. So take us back to the days leading up to January 6th, because this is what's, I think, somewhat unique about your situation in particular.
Mm.
Walk us through what happened in the days leading up to January 6th with respect to you and your situation with law enforcement.
Okay, so I might have to take you back just a little further
Go for it.
and just give you a general sense. I have a big group of guys and we travel around the country, we go to events and stuff like that. And usually when I put events together, there's usually a large crowd that's also with us.
Okay.
So it's responsible. I think it's as a person that should be responsible, I contact local law enforcement every time that we go, just tell them, hey, look, we're coming into town.
When you say
Um,
we and people, like, are you talking about the Proud Boys in a group?
no, I'm talking about Trump supporters in general.
Okay, so you
I
call them, you say, hey, you call law enforcement and say, hey, this is Enrique. I got a big group of Trump supporters. We're coming to X city, and we wanted to give you a heads up.
Yes. Um,
Why?
because that I don't want clashes. I don't want issues because we've had death threats. We've had specifically on July 3rd of 2019, we actually had a real threat of an acid attack.
Okay.
These members of Antifa decided that it would be a good idea to mix acid with wax, and they wanted to throw it on people. So, and at that point, law enforcement contacted me about that threat. So I don't want clashes. So it's freedom of speech. So if you want to protest Trump supporters, that's 100% fine. Um, but I want to keep both groups separate because that's where the issues start. So leading up to January 6th, I was in contact with law enforcement, letting them know what our plans were, where were we going to be. And I go a step beyond. As soon as I land in DC, I share my location with local law enforcement, just to so they could see where the events are happening and things like that. So in the lead up to January 6th, I contacted law enforcement and I told them, hey, look, I'm going to be in town. And these are our plans. And our plans were very simple. Our plan was to listen to the president speak in its entirety. And I was actually supposed to speak on two stages, one close to the Washington Monument and another one right by the Capitol. I believe it was 2 p.m. I was scheduled to speak.
Hey guys, I know this conversation with Enrique is riveting, but I want to tell you something real quick. If you have a fire extinguisher, a first aid kit, whatever it is, because you want to be prepared in case of an emergency, then I suggest that you join me and get a life vac. This simple device can easily save a life in the event of a choking incident. So easily that the company called me a couple of weeks ago and said, you're not going to believe this, but one of your viewers purchased a life vac from your show and saved a life. It's that easy. It's that simple in the event of a choking incident. And this is why schools, police stations, fire departments, EMS, cruise lines, restaurants, they all have a life vac now because it is that easy to save a life in the event of a choking incident. You can be a hero too. And by the way, if your kid's school doesn't have a life vac, they'll send one for free to them. Go to lifevac.net. It's lifevac.net to get one right now. A life literally could depend on it. So go to lifevac.net. All right, let's get back to the conversation with Enrique. So when you contact, in this case, law enforcement in DC,
Mhm.
which agency in particular do you contact and what is their response?
It depends. It depends on the situation. So obviously, the heads of all law enforcement agencies, federal law enforcement agencies, are in DC. So if it's like in the city center, I contact MPD, which is the Metropolitan Police Department. If I'm on the National Mall, I contact Park Police. If I'm on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol, I contact Capitol Police. And I've done this throughout the years. Specifically with January 6th, they assigned a liaison to me, a lieutenant, a 22-year veteran. His name's Shane Lamont. That was my point of contact at that
Okay.
point.
So take it. So you contact them. Hey, I'm coming into DC ahead of January 6th. I've got some events planned. They assign you a liaison. Take it from there.
And it depends on the situation.
No,
if
no.
it's a
With
um,
respect to January 4th, 5th, 6th, or whatever this is, walk
mhm.
us through that scenario
Yeah. So
specifically.
I in this scenario, I contacted them and I told them what my plans were, a timeline. I actually sent them a document that shows exactly all the speaking engagements. And in there was the president's speech,
Okay.
and I think he was going to speak all the way to like 1:15. He was scheduled to speak all the way through 1:15. The president goes beyond that sometimes, but for the most part, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
Uh, he and then after that, I at like 1:30, I was supposed to be by the Washington Monument. I don't remember the exact
You know,
specifics, but
but let's just so
basically,
there's
it's that.
that's your schedule. So walk us through what happens in the days leading up to January 6th.
Okay, so there was a Black Lives Matter banner that was burned,
Okay.
and I took credit for it.
Did you do
So
it?
uh, at this point, yes, I did it.
Okay.
We'll go with that.
Okay. So you burn the banner.
I burned the matter. I admit to it, and I I kind of figured I was going to get arrested because I was getting contacted by local law enforcement agency. I'm out of Miami-Dade, so Miami-Dade police contacted me, DC police contacted me, and some members of the media that I know that they had, I guess, sources within the police department, the Metropolitan Police Department. They were asking questions, and I kind of put two and two together, and I knew I was going to get arrested going in there, and I was okay with it. Um, and I did. I flew into DC, and then the moment I got off the plane, I pretty much got arrested for it. And the
What
judge
day is
put
this?
this is January 4th.
Okay. So the 4th
Okay.
of January, you're arrested for burning a banner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm arrested for burning a banner, and my intention was that's why I specifically flew in on January 4th because I knew that DC is a no bail state, which they'll bail you out with no cash or whatnot, and they'll bail you out the next day. I knew it was going to be like a misdemeanor, so my intention was get arrested, fight the case, get released on January 5th, and go watch Trump's speech at the Ellipse on January 6th. But there was a wrench thrown into that cog, and the judge said, "Well, you can't be in D.C.," which I was okay with. I've seen Trump speak a million times, so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna miss a speech. No big deal. Whatever. I'll have the guys come over. I went to Baltimore. I'll have the guys come over. We'll have a couple beers, just hang out, and just kick back.
Okay.
But
So just so everyone's clear on this, on January 6th,
mhm,
you were not in Washington, D.C. at all.
absolutely not.
Okay.
I
So
was in
so let's
Baltimore,
let's just
Maryland.
for the sake of time, let's fast forward unless I'm missing something big because I wanted to establish that clearly. You were
Mhm.
not in Washington D.C. on January 6th. So what walk us through what goes happens next with respect to law enforcement.
Okay, so at that point, I had no communication with law enforcement because they took my phone. So I didn't even have a way to communicate, not just with law enforcement, with nobody. I didn't have a way to communicate with anybody. There was a journalist with me that I got her to call my mom to kind of tell her what the situation was. I know she was watching it on TV, super worried. So I can't tell you what happened with law enforcement because I actually didn't
No, no, no.
know.
But what I want to know is so the riots happen, okay, on
Yes,
January 6th. You're
yes,
not in D.C. And then what do they? My understanding is then they say we think you had something to do with planning this.
yes. So
Okay, why?
sh- because I'm the leader of the group, and they wanted to make the biggest impact that they can make. Because I don't know how you plan what happened at the Capitol. I don't agree with a lot of things that happened at the Capitol that day. I don't know how you plan uh, that being about 100 miles away with no communication, uh, no form of organizing or anything like that. I wasn't worried.
Okay,
I
so
didn't
let
think
me
that was
Enrique, I just
fun.
want to establish a couple things. Had
Mhm.
you been in Washington D.C. on January 6th,
Mhm.
you said your schedule and your intention was to go listen to President Trump give a speech and maybe at two venues. Was that
Yes.
all you ever discussed doing?
Yes, we actually even planned after these speaking engagements, we're planning a party in on the Virginia side. with Michael Graves, which was a lead singer for the Misfits, and he was going to do like a little unplugged thing.
Yep.
So we had plans, and none of
But
them
your plans
involved.
did, let me ask it this way. Did your plans ever include going to the US Capitol to protest?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So then again, for the sake of time, I just wanted to establish that. So law enforcement at some point comes to you and says, Enrique, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what I want to understand. Did they say, we're charging you with helping to plan these events that happened at the Capitol?
About a year later, that's exactly what the government alleged. Yes.
Okay. But you have a schedule that you've actually shared with them that says, here's what my plan was. I'm going to two speeches. I got a party in Virginia afterwards where we're going to listen to some music. Why did they, what was it that gave them, put them under the belief that that was your intention to go to the Capitol and do whatever?
I don't think at any point did they think that I actually did it. I think that they showed their colors at trial. But at no point did I actually think that they personally believed that I went into the Capitol or I planned to storm the Capitol. Because there was no evidence. It took them a year and a half to find the evidence. And let me tell you what that evidence is.
Yeah.
Somebody sent me a document, right, for a sit-in. It wasn't for assaulting the Capitol. Your viewers can see it online when they search 1776 returns. They made it sound like super ominous. And it was like, it was a plan to stay to sit in. Now that document, I never saw. Somebody sent me that document. It was never opened. The government never alleged that I opened it. They actually said that I didn't open it in open court. So other than that, they had absolutely nothing. Did I celebrate what happened at the Capitol that day on as I saw it on January 6th? Absolutely. Guilty. If that's a crime, go ahead and take me. But I have no idea how they can say that I fomented an insurrection when I'm contacting law enforcement.
Okay. So I just want to restate the facts as we know them now. You were intending to fly to Washington, D.C. You contacted law enforcement to tell that you were coming to D.C. You provided a schedule to them that showed them where you would be while you were going to be in D.C. that included rallies with President Trump and an event in Virginia after his speech. And nothing in those communications ever show you visiting the Capitol, going to the Capitol in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Okay.
There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever. And there's no evidence because that wasn't the plan. It's not like,
right.
Oh, they didn't find anything.
So
they didn't find anything because that wasn't the plan.
So the government comes to you and says, well, Enrique, we're charging you with, what was it, sedition?
Sedition, yes.
Okay. And you say, time out. I showed you my plans. They never included that. I wasn't even there. There's no evidence that you have that I communicated with anybody about going there, even if I wasn't going to go.
Yeah.
Do you sit back and say, this is like, what does your lawyer tell you at this point?
Well, first off, they didn't just come to me and say that. They turned my door into splinters at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Walk us through that. So what happens? You get a knock at the door? Or do they just barrel it down?
They knocked and then barreled it down. But that was at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was dead asleep. I had just come from a meeting the prior night, and I came home late. So I was super tired. And I was laying in bed and I hear the banging on the door, and I'm like, what the hell? I wake up my wife and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like, did you hear that? And then the next thing I knew, it was a pow. I came out. I kind of knew what was going on because they kept screaming FBI. So
how many agents?
A whole squad. I mean, they put like a whole tank outside and
20,
drones.
30?
Probably upwards of 30 to 40 agents and local law enforcement.
Do you live in an apartment or a complex? Like, did your neighbors freak out?
Yes, my neighbors did freak out. I live in a home right at the heart of Miami, so I have a lot of neighbors, and they all came out at 5 o'clock in the morning in boxers. Okay.
So what happens next? Do they put you in cuffs and arrest you? Do they tell you what's going on?
They put me in cuffs and arrest me, and they had told me, I'm like, what are you guys here for? And they told me, well, you're here because I hadn't gotten charged with sedition yet, because that was a superseding indictment later on. I got charged with the 1512 that got overturned by the Supreme Court, the fifth obstructing an official proceeding.
But
So that,
wait. So I'm just sorry because I want to make sure I don't want to miss any details. So I
yeah,
apologize with,
it's okay.
but at this point you're saying proceeding of what? Because I'm not in Washington D.C. I didn't obstruct anything, and there was no proceeding I went to. So
Yeah.
is that? I mean, that to me immediately is what's jumping out for me.
Yeah. So the other four gentlemen that were part of my case, they did go in the Capitol, and they don't say that they didn't. They did trespass. We weren't charged with anything violent. And then how they what they did is they hit me with a conspiracy because the actual charge isn't sedition itself. It's called seditious conspiracy. So they said that I was the leader, and to quote the judge, I was the ultimate leader on the ground that day on January 6th. He said that at my sentencing. It sounds cool. They make me sound like some Bond villain, and I might write a fiction about it, but it's not true. I'm sitting here, I'm pardoned. I could say whatever I want. Sean, I could go ahead and tell you and be like, yeah, you know what? I did it. But I'm telling you the truth that at no point did me or any of my guys decide it was a good idea, because I would think it's an actual stupid idea to storm the capital of the people of the free world.
Yeah, thank you for saying that because I think
Yeah.
I wanted to get to that, and again, I want to because of how you've been portrayed in the media, I want to just get you
Mhm.
to ask you. I mean, do you like there are people, there are a range of people with respect to January 6th.
Mhm.
And I believe that if you hit a cop, I don't really care what's going on, or hit another. I mean, I've denounced violence at all
Yes.
in all phases, right? Do you share that view that violence is not acceptable, whether it's January 6th or not?
There's no realm that I will condone violence against uh, any human being, regardless of political ideology or anything else, any uh, describing factor. At no point is that okay. Um, I'll denounce it the moment I see it, and I've said it millions of times, and I said it that day, Sean. I said, I don't agree with what happened. You trespass, get hit with trespassing. You put your hands on a police officer, you should be arrested and charged with that. Um, it's not, if I was on the ground that day, I don't even think the four guys that I got charged with, I don't even think they would have gone into the Capitol that day, because just timeline, I'd be speaking at an event. The Capitol was actually breached before the president stopped speaking.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out because the media won't tell you that. That
Yes.
if you do the timeline from
Mhm.
what it takes to walk from where that speech was to the Capitol, the breach occurs. So let me ask you this because I want to get to the nut of this quick. What we just said is a fact. If you watch that rally,
Mhm.
you were present for the speech that President Trump did, and you decided to walk to the Capitol. By the time you would have gotten there, everything would have been going down, right? That's a
It
fact.
takes so I've obviously, part of my case, I lived inside my discovery and my evidence in my case. At 12:58, the first breach happens, right? The first breach, which is the fence that got
Yep.
toppled over. President Trump didn't stop speaking until about like 1:15. And it takes 30 minutes. Takes 30
Yeah.
minutes for a person to walk from the ellipse to the Capitol.
Yep. Okay. So then let's just get to it. What happened on January 6th in the Capitol? Why did, what, who were the people that planned this and plotted it? Who were the bad people in this situation?
So, one, I think it was a protest gone wrong, and I think there was a lot of agitators in the crowd. I haven't been able to see. I've seen some evidence of it, of people that just came in, shook a fence, riled up the crowd, and then walked back, which is classic. And at every breach point, there is that person or a couple people doing that. There's a lot of people that, just got, most people that went into the Capitol got caught up in the moment. Again, I'm not going to condone anybody
Right.
putting
But
their
what I'm
hands
trying to
on
get
law
at,
enforcement.
what I'm trying to get at,
Mhm.
Enrique, is I don't, with like you just laid out the timeline. The
Yes.
people that were on the ellipse listening to President Trump
Mhm.
could not be the same people who breached the Capitol at the moment. I mean, eventually, potentially.
No.
But the idea is, so I mean, what I'm trying to figure out from people like you that have lived this Was this just, to your point, a bunch of agitators that went nuts, or was there a plot that was executed on that day by people who knew exactly what they were doing, that they wanted to breach the Capitol?
As from my perspective, from seeing things, I have not seen, because I didn't only have access to my discovery. I had access to the discovery of all January 6th, all the evidence in January 6th. I have not seen any evidence of actual pre-planning by anybody to breach the Capitol.
So do you? I guess again, not to, I just want to make sure I'm
Go ahead.
I'm hearing you exactly. So you don't believe that there was ever an actual group of people that said, "Hey, tomorrow we're going to go to the Capitol and do this"? It was sort of an independent group of agitators who just got overcome by events. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's my opinion on it, and that's what I've seen, and that's what the evidence shows.
Okay. Let's talk about the feds. There is now factual evidence that federal informants were there that day.
Yes.
In your opinion, and based on what you've seen, was that coincidence, or were those folks placed there?
So those folks were placed there specifically with our case, and I can talk to it with experience on it. Specifically on our case, the FBI had embedded 26 FBI informants. The funny part is that the government never called any of them to testify because they kind of all said the same thing, that there wasn't any pre-planning done by any of the guys. But within that group of 26, there was a gentleman that we called to the stand, not the prosecutors. We called to the stand, and we saw he was at a very pivotal moment in at the Capitol. I don't know if you remember, there's this video that it shows. I don't know where it is in the Capitol, because I've never been there. I hope to take a Capitol tour at some point. But it's like a garage door that's coming down. I don't know if you've seen it. It's inside the Capitol. The garage door is coming down. It's like an aluminum door.
Yeah.
And this person is a paid FBI informant. He's been doing this for 10 years where he infiltrates groups. That person, while that gate was coming down so it could secure the members of Congress going through the tunnel, this gentleman grabbed a pedestal and ran over there and put it so the door can't go down, and that allowed more Capitol protesters to continue their path forward. We asked them that on the stand under oath, and he said yes, he did it. We asked him, well, were you told to do it? He refused to answer. But he did say that the FBI gives them some leeway on committing crimes. And I'm not making this up. It's not a conspiracy. It's in the transcripts. He goes ahead and he says that he is allowed to commit crimes in order to further his information gathering assignment, I guess.
Wow. There is a gentleman that's gotten a lot of attention named Ray Epps,
Yes.
who is on tape telling people, let's go to the Capitol. And people are yelling at him, Fed, 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 because they believe he's an informant for law enforcement.
Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. What? No! Peacefully. Fed, 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 Fed.
I find it odd that a guy who is on tape saying, let's go do this, right? Basically gets a slap on the wrist. What do you think of it?
So if you take Mr. Epps and you just go by the video that you saw, right? That most of America has seen, where he's saying something along the lines of, we need to storm the Capitol, blah, blah, blah. And let's say he didn't show up that day at the Capitol. He already did more than I did.
Well, that's why, right. So this is a guy who's encouraging people. You weren't in town. And yet there's something odd about his case that I think is not coming out.
Yeah, he didn't do a single day in jail. He's going on his little media tour. He's playing the victim. I honestly think we didn't have access to his files. That's another thing that's kind of weird. We didn't have access to his files. We had access to everybody's files. Well, my lawyers did, because the government did not allow me to see the evidence of the informants My lawyers had to go into an FBI field office, go into a monitored room. They couldn't take laptops. All they could take was a notepad, and they had terabytes of information they had to go through, and they couldn't take that evidence out. And they couldn't even show me exactly what it was, just the events that happened. And that's how we found out a lot of things about these informants.
Right.
We didn't know there was 26 informants. The government didn't tell us beforehand. We had to force the judge to allow that to be seen.
So let me just ask you this. What did you think when you got President Trump's pardon, and what do you want to do going forward? Do you feel a need for retribution, or are you just like, I'm glad that chapter of my life is behind me?
Okay, so I was very happy that we have a president that keeps his promises. He did pardon those people that did put their hands on a police officer, but he didn't pardon them. He said he was going to go case by case, and that's what he did. He didn't pardon them because of their acts. He pardoned them because of the process. The process was corrupt. Therefore, the only solution to solve that, the only solution was a pardon. I was extremely happy. My family, more than ever, my family was extremely, I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life rotting in a federal prison for a crime I didn't commit. The thing I'm happiest most about, I got to hug my mom again. Right. And moving forward, the past 3 years, I've been jotting down my plans of what I'm going to do for business, what I'm going to do for my political life. And I kind of 2 months ago, I kind of just took an eraser to it, and I kind of just said, you know what? I'm just going to, for the first 2 months, I'm going to enjoy life. And then I'm going to sit alone after these 2 months and figure out what the rest of my life holds. But retribution. Right? Is there any form of retribution? I'd say yes, but I want to clarify what retribution means to me personally. It doesn't mean violence. It doesn't mean I wanna enact revenge, that typical revenge. My retribution and my revenge is I want these people investigated. If they didn't do anything wrong, they don't have to worry about it. And I think we should start with the top up. We should start with Merrick Garland, Steve Bannon, like him or not. Steve Bannon did 3 months for not complying with a congressional subpoena. Merrick Garland did the same thing. He's not pardoned by Biden. And I think we should start there, move our way down to Michael Graves. I mean, we could do this all day.
Okay. Enrique, I really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through this. This is what's important because the media won't tell people this story. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate you.
You bet.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.